On everyone, it's your guy Cole Jackson back here on Road Graders, and we are going to be continuing our key matchup series where we're bringing in film folks from our opponent of that week and really diving into the X's and O's that are going to be what determines this football game. Before I get my guest in here, I do want to remind you that Profit X is the proud sponsor of Road Graders this year. I'm giving you my play this week. I'm going to be chasing that Derrick Henry anytime touchdown. And the reason I'm chasing this is because Profit X is giving you the best odds on the market. And they are giving you, if you bet $100, they're giving you up to $20 more in your winnings than other markets. It's peer-to-peer betting. It is the absolute go-to for all betting needs. And you can use sign-up code ROADGraders to get up to $200 in Profit X cash back. Without further ado, I want to bring in my guest, Jake Burns from the Cleveland Browns. If I can, I don't know what's going on here with my, gotta hit that button. Little StreamYard glitch there. So bringing in Jake Burns of the Cleveland Browns film breakdown over on Substack. I'll drop the link down in the description below, as well as the YouTube channel where you can check out some of the previews of his work. Jake, my guy, how is it going?
We're okay, man. You know, we talked off air about having a couple kiddos the same age, so we're perpetually tired, Cole, but we are surviving, as we say.
Got a little Thursday night football. I don't know if you do. I got it going off to the side here. So if you guys see me peek into the right, trying to see if Jaden Daniels is going to get me some fantasy points. That's what I'm looking for.
It's not your traditional Thursday game. Those are usually throwaways. This is a good one. So yeah, definitely.
High powered.
Definitely
Yeah.
peeking.
So what we're going to be doing is kind of diving into some of the key matchups. I'll kind of same as last week when we had Aaron in from Cover One. A lot of good feedback. As always, hit that like button, hit subscribe if you're new here. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think the key matchup to this game is going to be. And one thing I wanted to pick your brain on first, Jake. The Baltimore Ravens are celebrating the 30th anniversary of the team coming to Baltimore, obviously from Cleveland. This has a lot of people are just like, yeah, the celebration it's the first home game. The NFL scheduled the Browns. I don't know. It feels pretty intentional if you ask me. I'm just kind of wondering what's kind of the pulse of the Browns fan base on this. It's been a weirdly fiery week for a week 2 matchup. Some shots taken from Grant Delpit and Jerry Jeudy at the Ravens. It's been really interesting. So what's kind of the pulse of the Browns fan base?
Yeah, the root of Cleveland Browns fandom is it's irrational stuff. So you're not going to really talk to very many folks who are able to understand the process. I've been on one other show here, talked about this. When this sort of stuff happens, do I think there's a rivalry here? To an extent, yes. I mean, Cleveland hasn't been relevant enough to make it, the Pittsburgh level rivalry. The Baltimore's had all of that, but there is there's deep-rooted scar tissue. I don't think Browns fans want to feel this way, but their team was taken from them, and it's not Baltimore's fault where they landed, but their team was taken from them from an owner who was pretty nasty and had a lot of difficult, he left a lot of bridges burned in the way he took a historic franchise out of Cleveland. Now, again, it's not Baltimore's fault. Their team was robbed and taken to Indy. All of this is interconnected in a way, but ultimately, it's something where, Cole, I was 6 when they left, and I didn't know it then that way. I knew my dad and my grandpa were really mad, and so I was mad because they were mad, and you grow that way. And then I've only known the Browns since '99, which has just not been very enjoyable, right? But you ultimately you do what your DNA tells you to do, which is this is the team you follow, this is who you support, and you go with it, whatever. But there are people who were around and really, realized adults when that happened and can never get over it. It will never be something they can move on from. So when this happens, they just want to be mad because it's the easiest thing to do is to be mad. But when you think about a week 1 celebration, you have so many moving parts, permits, parades, logistics of folks coming in. Here's the weekend we're doing it. Here's the hotel reservation. It's hard to get the schedule week 2's opponent and be like, oh, okay, Teresa down in we got to change all. You just can't do that. The thing I don't know, and the mystery in all of this, is how much the NFL is at blame for it, right? Did the NFL know? How much did they know? How much were the Ravens reminding them with an email to do not schedule the Browns here? Like that whole thing. Or maybe the NFL, if you want to get conspiracy brained, is like, you know what, we kind of like this. Let's just do it anyway.
Let's add some fuel to the fire.
All of which is possible. It stinks. It sucks because, like, this is all fun and games, and it is. This is all released from everyday life and all of that. But there were people who were, I don't think we'll ever get over it. It really hurt them, man. And obviously the Browns have never recovered to be what they were in those early 90s and what ultimately took off in Baltimore, because Browns fans feel like that should have been them that won that Super Bowl. There's a lot of stuff there. So those folks, for lack of sensitivity, are kind of aging out. That's just the nature of the world. But like, there's enough of them that care, or their parents made those folks like my age care. But I don't view it. I don't think the Ravens are being nefarious. I just think the optics ended up stinking, and the NFL should have done a better job with handling this. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm not mad or bothered by it. I kind of echo a lot of what, ironically, Joe Flacco had said about it, which is like, everybody can jump to negativityville, but it feels like something that the Ravens wouldn't have done intentionally. And it feels like it was just a circumstantial thing. Whether you want to believe the NFL did it circumstantially, it's open to your interpretation, but it is unfortunate that it landed here.
I'm most certainly putting my money on the NFL, knowing exactly what they're doing, just as a way to drum up any sort of hype around a matchup, and all negative publicity, it turns into good publicity for them. So that's definitely where my money is. But yeah, no, it's one of those. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because you and I are about the same age, and I don't even remotely remember, obviously, the Ravens Colts thing. So like, but there's a lot of older folks in the fan base that talk about it and how much they hate the Colts. And just for me, it's just not as relevant. And there'll be younger Cleveland Browns fans that are teenagers right now that are really trying to figure out why everyone's so mad. So
Right.
It is one of those generational things. It'll be really interesting just to see how it goes, because there's kind of, with all the talk that's gone into this matchup, like I said, there's been an odd amount of kind of bulletin board material for a week 2 matchup that's just in an early season. I know people say they don't, like Kyle Hamilton said today he doesn't care about bulletin board. I don't buy that for a second. I think they're absolutely in there talking about it regularly.
Well, let me say this. I think, listen, I know the Browns respect Baltimore, and I know Grant does, and I know they're smart guys, and Jerry too. Like they know who Baltimore is. They respect it. They played against them. They've never done this in the past, Cole, because they've had all opportunities to do this in various ways and across multiple years. Grant's been here 5 years now. Jerry's in his second year, could have done this last year. What's going on is the perception of the Browns is rough right now, and that's warranted off of a 3-14 season and all of that. I think they're tired of feeling like they just have to bend the knee to everybody. And when they're answering questions about, like, are you afraid of these other teams? That's really how the questions are asked. Are you, what about them scares you? Or, like, I think they're just tired of feeling like they need to be pushed around, or the league it just demeans them in a way. So I understand the bulletin board nature of what it is. And I understand that you'll always hear people be like, "Whoa," and Kyle has said the same thing. Like you mentioned, is it going to make me play harder? Yeah. I mean, listen, this is the most sensitive group of human beings, I think, in the world gathered in one place. They do cling to these things, but I would say, like, I don't think the Browns are being intentionally disrespectful. These guys have been around long enough to know how good the Ravens are and what they've accomplished, especially in recent years. I think they're trying to set the tone for their guys in their own locker room to not play afraid. Like, we're not afraid of Derrick Henry. Obviously, they know what happened last year. They know what happened to Jeremiah in the open field with him last year. That doesn't miss anybody, but you can't line up afraid of Derrick. And the Browns have had relative success against Derrick prior to his Baltimore arrival. So I do think it's, like, not meant to be intentionally disrespectful. I think it's just more like, hey, we are the leaders on the microphone, and we have to tell the guys that are, the Browns are younger than they've been in a while, and we're not afraid of them, because that if you show up that that you're afraid of them, then the game's kind of cast before it's done. So I that's where I stand on it. Even though I understand the clips will make the social media rounds.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. And honestly, the Browns early in Lamar's days were one of the better teams against him in the run. They were the first to kind of perfect the scrape and fill, and gave me basically a whole teach tape on how they were doing that. It was extremely impressive. So let's dive into the matchups, because I want to start here. I think It's going to be really interesting to take a look. So we're going to start with the Baltimore Ravens offense against the Cleveland Browns defense. And really where my eyes go every single time these teams meet is Myles Garrett. I mean, how can you not focus on what is the most skilled player on the unit? And this isn't just kind of a top dog on the Browns defense. This is a top dog at his position in the NFL, one of the best defensive players in the NFL, and probably one of the best defensive players of his generation. Myles Garrett has absolutely destroyed the Baltimore Ravens. If you go back through the numbers in the last 3 years, 2024 week 8, 9 pressures. 2024 week 18, 4 pressures. 2023 week 4, 1 sack, 5 pressures. 2023 week 10, 2 sacks, 4 pressures. 2022 week 7, 1 sack, 5 pressures. 2022 week 15, two sacks, 7 pressures. So like, this is just a guy that has had his way with the Ravens and kind of their, I guess, transition at offensive tackle, where they were trying to cover for Ronnie Stanley for so long until he kind of got back and got healthy. And luckily we got to see that last year with him finally getting back to some semblance of himself. But then in doing so, we've been chasing a right tackle for a while. And, I think we're getting something a little bit more consistent in Roger Rosengarten. And Myles Garrett's a guy that moves all around the D-line. One of my favorite clips of all time that I have clipped from another team that's not the Ravens is Myles Garrett doing the crossover over top of the center before he rushes. And it's just, I love stuff like that. So one thing I want to start with on this, and another guy that I want to give a shout out to, because he killed the Bengals last week, is Isaiah McGuire. So his running mate at the opposite edge. And, the Browns have done a really good job over the last few years kind of getting him a running mate. They had Jadeveon Clowney, then they had Zadarius Smith, and Zadarius Smith killed the Ravens last year in that week. I believe that was the week 8 matchup. Clowney had 9 pressures, but Zadarius had a number in the fourth quarter, was super disruptive in that win that the Browns took from them. So, I'm really interested to see how this shakes out, but kind of wondering what your perspective is on Myles Garrett, where you think they're going to try and align him to get some of that pressure, and kind of how they used him last week with Isaiah McGuire, who's a bit of a newer face to opposing fans.
Yeah, I think that you're nailing it in terms of this battle up front. And I don't pretend to know Baltimore's structure or sort of this sort of, I mean, it's really too early to make definitive statements about the year for them, but I think this game on that side of the ball is dependent on how well Cleveland handles the interior and over to Myles. Like, I think Ronnie versus Isaiah, and Myles will move, Cole. He'll move sides here and there. He'll predominantly be a left side rusher, but he will flip sides, and they will take advantage of matchup perceptions. If they want to get him on Rosengarten a little bit more, they'll do that. But the interior of the Browns, and we'll see if Mike Hall plays, their second-round pick last year, who did tear his MCL at Baltimore week 18 last year, but is on the cusp of being ready. He's practiced all week. We'll see. But they have a pretty good group inside between Mason Graham, their 5th overall pick, between Malik Collins, who's a really good pass rusher, very agile.
He had a really good week
mover
last week too.
He's
very
good.
disruptive.
He's one of these fine wine, getting into their 30s DTs, man, who just really figure out how they can win all the time, and he's good.
I was looking forward to him versus. I was looking forward to Mason Graham, Dylan Fairchild, but it was really McCollins that was killing Fairchild. I was surprised. So
they were letting Mason take a lot of the double team and getting Malik isolated one-on-one. So that was a little bit of the plan. But I think, like, if the Ravens have some weakness, it's not very much, but it's not as far as the talent goes around those guys. The interior, and Linderbaum probably had just a bad week last week. He'll be fine, but I think that's where the Browns can find some advantage, because really, when you look at that side of the ball, it's if Derek and Lamar are having their way and the Browns can't be a little more slow to run, quick to pass, and all of the challenges that come with throttling and slowing down Lamar and keeping him bottled up. If that's the case and Derek is having his way, I mean, it's nightmare fuel. So, like, to me, it's essentially, can the guys up front on the Browns defensive line win that line of scrimmage battle? Now, Myles will get his. McGuire he's not nearly as refined, but he plays hard. He plays hard, and he plays all the way through the way. And I know that sounds elementary, but some guys just don't. You got to get on him, stay on him, and really make sure he's not a part of the finish of the play. And he's a really good athlete. He's long and lanky, and I'm pretty surprised he fell to the 5th round when he did, man, because the tools were there. The body type is there. if he continues on the pathway he's on, you are looking at a second contract player, a nice extension for him. So long story short, to your point, that offensive line, defensive line, and that's every week we can do this. But I think, again, when you play Baltimore, you have to do your best to make them singular football team. Now, that doesn't happen often because they're too good and all that. But right now, missing maybe Isaiah again this week, maybe missing Ricard this week, you do lose a little bit of that bully ball they like to play. So that helps in a sense. But yeah, I mean, to me, when I'm looking at it, and I've talked to my people on our side, is like, there's two things. Winning the line of scrimmage is going to be wildly important. The two corners, they'll be fine. You have a good point to come up with about the nickel stuff. We'll talk about that. It's how they handle that. And then it's just like, without JOK, who's been such a really diverse wild card for them with Lamar over the years.
Yep.
How do they handle the second level? Are they going to bring a backer in more and play more, of that, like a Rayshawn Jenkins down in the box instead of Devin Bush because he's twitchier and he can run and be rangy? I think Carson Schlesinger will be fine. He's a really good player. He's a nice pick for them, this rookie who was really good in week one. I think he's going to continue to be really good, but this is a different challenge. Lamar's a different athlete. He plays a position so different, and this is his first exposure to him, so it's going to be a lot for him to deal with. So it's just, to me, Lamar's going to get his, always does, in some way, shape, or form. But if you let Derek be a part of like consistently finding rush lanes because your personnel's lighter or you're doing different things worried about Lamar, then you're in trouble. You will be in trouble, and you'll see another 40 spot on the board this week.
Yeah, and that's why, like, my channel's called Road Graders because I focus on the trenches, and that's why the ... where the game is won is there. And that is, I had a conversation earlier this week, and someone was like, why do the Browns give the Ravens such a hard time? And it's because the Browns have historically had pretty good defensive lines built around Myles Garrett's around Myles Garrett's ability, and that is the force multiplier. That's how teams with less talent on paper can beat teams that have more talent. It's really winning that trench battle, and that's what I think Cleveland, and even Cleveland's offensive line, which we'll get to a little bit later, but historically they've had, for years they had the best interior offensive line to kind of go with, those kind of 5-6 years ago when they got Wyatt Teller from Buffalo, and they had the best offensive line in football for a little bit there, and that interior was the core. So that's really why I focus so much on the trenches. I do believe that's where the game is won, and I do believe that's where this is going to be such a critical force multiplier in this game. And, you kind of mentioned the nickel situation. That's kind of where I was going next, because the Browns have a very good outside corner duo in Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome. And if you take a look at the coverages that the Browns played, the Bengals offensive coordinator talked about in his presser today. They did what most teams do against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. That's, they play, they play deep. They keep the ball in front of them. They try not to let Jamar Chase and T. Higgins eat on the outside. And if you look at the coverages, the Browns played 29% cover one man, which I think is very significant. It shows how much they trust their corners in man coverage. And then they played 25% cover two and 25% cover three. So, almost 80% of their snaps coming in three coverages, but really all focused on keeping that ball from getting deep on them. And, Joe Burrow was 0 for 2 on shots 20 yards or deeper, 4 for 6 on shots 10 to 19 yards. But of his 23 dropbacks, 14 were 9 yards or less air yards. And that's really what it seemed to be the game plan was. So that combo of Newsome and Ward, I think usually I'm not as worried with outside corners because the Ravens do their best work in the passing game in the middle of the field. That's always been, using the tight ends, using Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, using Zay Flowers all over the field. Last week it was crossers. He basically every single catch he had was on a crossing route. So I'm interested to see that matchup with Harden and the matchup with Cameron Mitchell. Those are kind of the two guys that manned. I think Harden had about 20 something snaps and Cameron Mitchell had about 10. So those are going to be the guys manning Zay Flowers. So that's really where I'm looking when they get into 11-man personnel and they're going to put Nuke outside, which, Nuke was able to make that big play for the touchdown on the sideline. They'll look for those types of shots, and they'll ask Nuke to go up and play against anybody. I'm expecting that all year this year. They got him against the rookie last week. So that'll exist, but I think they're really going to look to work that middle of the field and try and get Zay to do what he did last week and really, work those crossing routes. How well can they track them? If they're in man coverage, can they keep up with them?
Yeah, no, that's you're identifying the right spot. There. It's interesting with them because they lost. So Greg Newsome was traditionally, well, it's hard to say. When he came out of Northwestern, he was an outside corner predominantly. In his rookie year, he was an outside corner, and they had a young man named Troy Hill who was with the Rams and came to Cleveland, went back to the Rams, and then they drafted Martin Emerson, and they moved Greg inside. So 2 years straight, Greg played inside. And then this camp, Martin tore his Achilles late in camp, so Greg's back outside. I think he's an outside corner. Phenomenal first game. Really nice, beautiful sideline breakup on a deep shot where he got his hand in the catch pocket on Jamar Chase. Hard to do that with that guy. He just looks comfortable there. He doesn't love to tackle. I mean, like, small corners don't love to tackle. Their paychecks aren't written that way. So if you are looking at these two are great cover corners outside. Denzel, I think, is one of the teachiest teach tape corners in the NFL, period. I think he's just perpetually underrated. And they will cover you, but they don't like to tackle. Like, the Bengals came out on their first drive that went like 14 plays and just said, hey, we're going to run a bunch of overloads. We're going to have a wing, maybe a slot rotation piece, in and out, yo-yo it, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to run at him, and we're not going to block Denzel, and we're going to make him fit the run. He didn't want to do it. Denzel's paychecks are signed for covering. They're not signed for tackling, but there are times where you have to get that done as a corner and handle it very well. So that game plan of going at Greg and Denzel, Greg's a bit more physical than Denzel in terms of the willingness, because he did it for 2 years to stick his head in there and get dirty and tackle. But just keep that in mind for your folks when they look at, like, okay, they're popping a couple runs. What's going on? Well, watch how they're leaving corners on an island and things like that. But they don't want to play Miles and Cam a ton. They're down a really talented. If this was a team chasing a championship or chasing a division title, I think they would have gone out and signed a slot player. Miles is a late round pick in 24's draft. Cam is a late round pick in the 23 draft. Their weakness types. Miles played, I'll give him some credit. He's out of South Dakota State, small school guy. Did play pretty well in week one. I think a coverage thing got attributed to him that didn't deserve to be attributed to him, and he did have some nice reps in against T. Higgins. But listen, this is Grant Delpit said it ahead of week one. They're a run defense team and they're a man coverage team. They played man, just Jim Schwartz we're talking about. This guy loves to play man. He'll play man as much as he can within the limitations of his defense. He's a cover two guy, so he'll try. This year he's been doing that through week one. They'll make it look a little bit like man and then spread out and drop into cover two. They'll use cover one variations out of two high shells where they'll drop a low hole sitter safety and a deep hole player. They'll do some cutting. So, like, hey, we know Zay likes on 3rd and 7+. He likes to run some shallows. Let's run man and let's cut him with the backside safety to take that away. So they're going to play man. They're going to play cover 3. They're going to play cover 2. Sometimes in years past, they've done a little bit of inverted cover 2 to get funky, but that's it. They don't like to play quarters. They'll play some cover 6, but I think people get confused on what Meg is on the backside anywhere and some of that stuff where it's man everywhere a guy goes, and that's football semantics. But like, that's who they are. They don't shy away from it. They get after the quarterback. They'll run some mug fronts. They'll put a single mug. They'll put Carson down in a real low hole right in the center's face and do some twist exchanges. And they'll sometimes double mug. Devin Bush. I mean, he's fine. He's ultimately like the most average linebacker you can find. You can do worse. You can do better. But they have a young man named Mahmoud Diabate who was a UDFA a few years ago who they like, but he had a quad injury that he was having a good camp. He stepped on the field for JOK after that Ravens-Browns game in Cleveland last year and played the rest of the year. And he's made real strides, but he missed a month with a quad injury from August through into September. And he only played a few snaps in week one as he finally came back. So we'll see. That ultimately, I think, is who they want to fill that role, because he's a guy who like looks the part, 6'4", 240, rangy, big, physical guy. But for now, it'll probably be a lot of Devin Bush. And then they'll get Jerome Baker involved in base, who's a veteran, Miami and some other locations. So that's the group. And then what you'll notice is Grant Delpit will play to the line of scrimmage a lot. They'll put him down in the box. They'll put him down in the slot. Sometimes they'll go big nickel. They'll bring in Rayshawn Jenkins, who's a veteran in the league, and bring Grant down. And sometimes Grant will play over the nickel. Grant's a Swiss Army knife. I mean, he's athletic enough to be a corner. They use him like one. He fits the box as well as any safety in the league, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's probably a bit audacious, but anyway, he's good. He's a good football player.
He is a good football player. There's no disagreement there.
Yeah, he's not as gifted in deep coverage, split stuff, and single high. He's just not instinctive enough as I would like him to be. But he's
almost
really
like one era outside of being one of those top guys. Like if he played in the 2000s, I think he'd be looked at a lot different than in this era.
Just rock solid, just a good football player, and they'll bring him down and play him low, and then they'll bring, like I said, they have some other veterans they'll play a little bit too, like DeMonte Casey, who was with Pittsburgh for a while. He's on the depth chart as a deep guy, but they like Ronnie Hickman, who's on the board in front of you there. He's a UDF out of Ohio State in his third year, we played every snap in week one. They like him. He's instinctual back there, and he does a pretty good job for them. So it's a good defense. Some of it depends on if they can get off the field and then have an offense that gives them last year's issue. They were right there with the Ravens in 23 DVOA 1 and 2 all year. Last year, the situation at quarterback around Deshaun Watson, the offense was anemic. They were doing different conflicting styles. It was so hard to watch. They were bad. And the defense gave up a lot around they couldn't sustain drives, and they were on the field all the time. Well, week one felt a lot like 23. They dominated possession. They had the defense off the field and very fresh. And if that's what happens, they have a chance. So we'll talk a bit more about that when we talk about the Browns offense, but like their whole thing is they have to keep their defense fresh, sustain drives on offense. And if they do that, that defense is pretty good. They're going to present some challenges.
Well, I mean, 7 yards allowed to the Bengals in the second half. Like they tightened up. They had a solution to the Chase Brown run game. And again, it really all starts up front in those trenches. But I think what's going to be interesting is how their linebackers play against the option run game, because that is something that I've been griping over. I think when Greg Roman left and Todd Monken came in, they changed from a veer style option run game to a traditional zone read. And that's why things like the scrape and fill work so well. It works really well against the veer because you're playing the read man's on the same side as like you're sweeping your diver on the same side versus being on opposite sides. So you're attacking that one side versus zone reads just so much harder to defend because it widens the football field. And that's what I think is going to be really interesting, is how these linebackers deal with the Ravens widening the football field. That's what Buffalo struggled with in the first 3 quarters. They kept getting widened out, and that's where those run lanes came from. And it wasn't until they started getting significant penetration from the backside where they basically said, whatever, if we get pulled out, if you guys run a trap, you're going to absolutely kill us. But, we're going to one gap the hell out of the backside. And like Derrick Henry's getting hit, like that fumble, Derrick Henry got hit at about a step after he got the football. That's how fast Ed Oliver was in the backfield. And that happened 3 different times against Roger Rosengarten on a left side zone run, backside defender. He just couldn't cut him off. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how the Browns adjust to seeing what the Bills did. They did it in the playoff game. I did a preview the week on the Thursday before the game last week, saying, this is why they won and then they come out and do it in the fourth quarter and they win the football game again. So I think it'll be really interesting how they take those lessons learned from the Bills beating of the Ravens, and kind of that's why they weren't able to close out the game. They tried to run the ball and they just got blown up with those penetrations. So switching into the other side of the football, bringing back our good friend Joe Flacco. I was one of the biggest Joe fans you could find. Love the guy. 2012 is just always going to have the most special place in my heart. I was in my 3rd year of university, so just like every Sunday was a hungover Sunday. I didn't miss a snap of football. It was great before I had kids. Anyway, I'm reminiscing. But jumping into kind of what I'm seeing as the key matchups here, I'm going to start with what I thought was the biggest vulnerability against the Cincy defense. And things are going to change a little bit. It looks like Conklin's going to be able to play this week. I don't remember what the practice report was on Thursday, but on Wednesday he was limited, so I'd expect he'll be back. But it was really, Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart. They had a combined, I think it was 12 pressures in this game. And what I thought was so interesting, Trey Hendrickson being more of the traditional power style rusher. I can't. I'm not going to say he's never done it because that would obviously be silly, but he used a cross chop like 4 times because he wanted to bend the edge, and I thought that was just very intriguing. And what I'm expecting is for this to be the polar opposite of the Ravens' rush plan against Josh Allen, where they basically want to get interior pressure and play contain with their edges. You're going from Josh Allen, who's just going to find a lane and take it, to Joe Flacco, who he ran 4 yards on Sunday and it looked like he was running for 20 seconds. Like, it was absurd. The guy can't move. And he never could. Just your typical throwback statue pocket passer. So I think it's going to be really interesting to get Mike Green involved in this game early, who that was his go-to all through the preseason. I've done 3 film breakdowns on his use of the skip cross chop. And I think against DeWarren Jones, and who's a bit more of a plotter, more of a length guy, more of a power guy, I think their ability to bend that edge and force Joe to be stepping up into the pocket because he's not likely to be scrambling out of it. I think that's where that penetration needs to come. And what was so funny watching this was, he had the nickname Check Down Joe towards the end of his time in Baltimore, and he was just feeding running backs and tight ends with those targets when he was getting pressured. And so that's something that the Ravens have actually struggled with in the past, because they drop into, and it got a little bit better in the last 7 weeks last year, but they would drop into like a too high, and they'd be dropping that first line of 5 defenders about 7-8 yards off, and teams like Cincy would just keep hitting the check down and just, we're going to take 5 a pop just because you can't stop it and you're doing the same thing over and over again. So I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how the Browns game plan that, and if the Ravens are going to get a little bit more aggressive, play a little bit more press to kind of go with that if they're getting that pressure early.
Yeah, really well articulated on a lot of that stuff. I don't. I'll just give you where I'm at with the Browns offense. First of all, I had no idea that Joe hadn't been back there since 2018.
Isn't that crazy? They played at Meadowlands when he was with the Jets, but it was an away game.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, obviously he came to the Browns, and the Browns had already met the Ravens twice that year, so he didn't get a chance to, come over there. But yeah, I mean, Joe is still capable. Like, that's the thing that I have had some discourse about. Like, Joe's still good enough to win some games. And do the Browns want to win some of those games as they try to resolve the quarterback of the future in upcoming drafts, et cetera, et cetera? They're living in 2 worlds so simultaneously. They got a bunch of veterans like you see in front of you that are capable guys, David and Joel and Teller, these guys, Conklin, who have been around the league and deserve to try to win and have a season, Grant and some Miles and others. But they're also cognizant of, we need a Power Ranger too. We watched the AFC North, we watched the AFC in general. That's why they swung on Deshaun Watson. They thought they had a rare opportunity to get a guy who could step up to the plate and go back and forth with these guys. That's a podcast and 17 million others that I've done about why it didn't come to fruition. But they know what they need.
Yeah.
And it's they're trying to do everything they can to figure it out. For now, based on who's in house, there are things to like about Dylan Gabriel. He's had moments in the preseason that make you understand where they're at with him. Joe makes the most sense. He's comfortable. Kevin and him sort of share a similar mind about football and the way they approach it. They're sympathetic in a way, and it works. Ultimately could have led to 24, 27 points last week. Should have. Drops killed them. 2 dropped completions. The first one to Jerry Jeudy was a little more difficult because of some pressure that landed on Joe's arm as he released it. But the 2 interceptions were fluky, to say the least. And ultimately, they should have put more points on the board and won that football game. They went for north of 300. Now the problem is this, and their whole season rides on this, Cole. They couldn't run it. The historically awful run day, continuing off of a historically awful run season last year, which started in a trend in 23, when Nick tore his knee up on Monday Night Football in Pittsburgh early in the season.
And what a hell of a player for you guys when he was in his prime. He was dangerous. I'll never forget that. It was 2019 week 2. Mm-hmm. He just absolutely gashed us. Absolutely.
I would, you're a film guy like I am. I would put what Nick was able to do up against any running back of this era,
Yeah.
in terms of his natural ability to see ahead, to make schemes that should not have work because he understood the patience, the throttle, the acceleration. I mean, God, man, he's going to be a Ring of Honor dude for them, and he should. If he doesn't have devastating knee injuries, both one at Georgia and this one in the NFL, I think there's a world where he's production wise at the same level as Derek in this era and Saquon, and he's the same. It's just,
He's an
that's how it
all-pro
goes,
guy
man.
that was somehow still underrated. Like that's what
Yeah.
was, and it was because he just didn't have the team success to kind of go with what he was able to put. I completely agree with you, and I've always said it. Like I've always been incredibly impressed with him, and again, that interior that they had during his prime worked out extremely well for what they wanted to do. And I would definitely like that style that he runs pairs really well with what Derek was so good at when he was in Tennessee.
Totally, man. Totally. And yeah, it was a huge turning point. I mean, they decided to let him walk this offseason. He goes to Houston, and yeah, I mean, these are hard. It's the same thing with Joe. You eventually it doesn't fiscally make sense, and you got to try to figure out the next era. So they have a couple they drafted Quinshawn, who they like. We know what happened. It's since been dropped. The NFL's got to figure out their side of the investigation, but it feels like since they're letting him play, this might be minimal, if anything, from the NFL side, because it ultimately depends on cooperation from somebody else, and there's a whole bunch of moving parts. So Quinshawn may play. If he does, it'll be a small role because he just hasn't been around enough. We'll see. Dylan Sampson, really encouraging first performance, more so out of the backfield, catching the football, where I don't know how you feel about it. I need my running backs to make a person miss. Like just on a snap, you're there in the league because you can make one guy miss. He did that. He was really comfortable in the passing game, 8 targets, 65-ish yards. Just a good game. Just a really good game.
Funny you say that,
really
because
good
when
piece,
I look at college running backs, the one thing I'm looking for is elusiveness, which speaks to that, but also their ability to force missed tackles, because there's so much difference schematically between college football, the NFL, the run blocking, depending on which program you're watching, and even the defensive line. Like it's so inconsistent, so hit or miss, just because of how sparse out the talent can be. But if you can nail down guys that can make guys miss, you're going to find the best football players.
Well, the thing is, and they did this with Cedric Tillman, who we can chat about too, but they're both Tennessee guys. And Josh Heupel at Tennessee does that split veer and shoot stuff where his wide receivers are on the sidelines and their backs are in space, and they don't do traditional things. They do block a lot, which he's capable, but they just don't do NFL things. And like it took Cedric Tillman a little while to figure out the nuances of other roles other than standing on the sideline, running a hitch, running a slant, or running a takeoff. Like it just took time. And that's the thing you weigh with the Tennessee. I didn't know, Cole, like how good could Dylan be at the traditional backfield stuff in the NFL? And he was good. He was fine. He was encouraging in terms of how he plays the position. At a nice second and 14 catch where he catches the ball to the slot on a little reverse, we called it a return where I played, but a little in and out, and turns into 13 yards. He was good. He's good. He's going to be a good compliment with Quinshawn, who I think is going to be a really nice back in the league. But I think Dylan will play more. Jerome Ford, not a good pass blocker. He's never materialized in the vision, never materialized in contact balance, and is ultimately just a third, fourth back. That's where it is, and a guy who will go somewhere else at the end of this year after his rookie deal is done. But that's the two likely names: Dylan Sampson, the rookie, and then Jerome Ford. The problem is they couldn't run it last week, and they had Joe dropping back 50 times. And listen, brother, in the year 2025, having Joe drop back 50 times is a death sentence over the course of a period of real time. He can do it here and there. He made it work in week 1. And this was a sort of the problem, Cole, with their 24 team that went to the playoffs, was like Joe comes in late in the year and they're just asking him to do a lot because they cannot figure out run game efficiency. They're one of the worst over the period of time from Joe's arrival to now, between when Joe left, which, I mean, you've watched Joe more than anybody. The pairing with Shane Steichen was the weirdest choice to me, both from the Indy side and from Joe's decision to go there. Like that whole year is weird to me. Throw that out, because this is the offense he's comfortable in. So he can still get it done. But the Browns season rides on whether they can run it efficiently. And, I don't know if Matabike is going to play this week. It looks like he got to be a limited fashion today. We'll see if he plays. But the interior group is older. Batonio, Posick, Teller, Conklin, all guys who have been around for a while, into their 30s now, or right on the cusp, and have had serious wear and tear, big knee injuries, back injuries. it's showing up, Cole. They're not as good as they used to be, man. It just
sure.
it happens. And they got really, for lack of a better term, I thought they got bullied in the first week against Cincy, who has good play. Like Shamar is good. He's gonna be good. They didn't miss on him like Miles Murphy. He's gonna be good. Trey is good. BJ Hill played really well. They just beat them in ways I didn't expect. They did the double team displacement, didn't move people the way it needed to in the gap moving schemes. They did not do well enough cutting off the backside of zones to be able to hit the front side bang course. They didn't do that stuff very well. I don't know if that continues. I expect this group, who's a bunch of veterans and savvy guys, to figure it out some weeks, but they're not going to be the road grader 21 and 22 versions that were just dominating in the trenches. So they'll have good weeks. They'll have bad weeks. It's not who they used to be is the story. DeJuan Jones at left tackle's gigantic, 6'8", 340. I mean, you kind of create that body in a lab for an offensive tackle, but he's mechanically sound. He's struggles cutting off the high side as consistently as he needs to, and he doesn't play through the whistle. So he's a liability. He's better in pass pro than run blocking, which is mystifying when you think about that from a sheer size perspective.
He's a plotter.
He is a plotter, but then like in pass
Orlando
pro,
Brown Jr. in a way, because Orlando Brown Jr. got this weird reputation as being like this massive physical, and it was because he was big, but he didn't play big. And that was always my big thing with Orlando Brown Jr. He was a finesse tackle. He was at his best getting out in space and just cutting off and getting in the way, which, to be fair, he was really good at when he was a right tackle for the Ravens, like really good at it. So it's not that he wasn't skilled at it, but I think a lot of people just had a misconception about the type of player he was, because he had the size, but he didn't play up to the size.
Correct. And this is a little bit of, I think he's better at using the size. I just think he's not twitchy enough to understand, like, mid pass rush, what is being done to me that I need to be ready to counter. And then if he can't cut off the high side, the teams can start to talk to each other and figure out what he's susceptible with issues, and you'll see it. It's just, he has some great reps, and then you'll have some that make you scratch your head where it's like, hey man, I don't know how you couldn't handle that punch and it caught you off balance. You're this size. Or in run game, he just doesn't take the correct pathway, or he'll just kind of like let a guy get away from him in the last 2.5 seconds of a rep. And it's like, that's the guy who ends up making the play on the pursuit angle. So it's just little things like that. Now, to his credit, he's had 2 injuries that have cost him both seasons mid-year, the last 2 years. He also came into the league as a right tackle out of Ohio State, played predominantly right tackle his rookie year when Conklin had the devastating knee injury, goes to left tackle last year. He gets hurt himself and he's trying left tackle again. It's new. They are definitely going to give him the year to see if he can figure it out, because they need to solve whether they need to invest in a left tackle, which is, again, like a point of contention. Is Armand Membo, the kid from Missouri, is having a great start to his career, and it's like, he was there. Do you take Mason? Do you take him? You know, it's a lot. But like, here's the thing, man. If the Browns can run it, I think they need to be a bit more gap heavier than zone heavy, in my opinion. If they can run it, they got a chance. If they do a lot of what happened last week, which is they're one of the worst yards before contact and yards after contact rushing teams, I think the Ravens will handle the pass game better than Cincy did. The Browns do have a couple weapons at wide receiver. Tillman, I think, has come into his own. I don't like hyperbolic statements, but you can see a pathway to him being somebody who's like a homeless version of like Nico Collins. He's got the same body type. He's long armed and he's twitchier than you think.
Strider, physical. Like, he's got these long, hard strides. That was always the big thing about Nico, especially coming out of Michigan. Like, he was when he got going, he was taking like 4 yards a step. Like, he just flew.
100%. He's the problem is his rookie year. Like I told you, he had a lot of development. They ended up trading a guy you probably maybe remember, maybe don't, Donovan Peoples-Jones. They traded him mid-year to get Cedric Moore involved, and then, you know, had to work through some things. Then he had a concussion that cost him the ability to play in the playoff game. And then last year, when they traded Amari Cooper, he hit a hot streak weeks 7 through 11. You saw him in Cleveland. When the Ravens came to town, he had a great game. He strung together 4 great games with Jameis Winston. And then he had a concussion against the Steelers week 11, and he was done for the year. So it's like, can he stay healthy, navigate a full season? The tools are there. The traits are there. They like him. He's a guy who gets open. We'll see. He's a challenge because he's physically strong at the catch point. He's strong at the top of routes. Jerry Jeudy's different. He's more route nuance, route wiggle. He's more set you up, make you go, make you lean, cut in and out. Neither of them are ball winners, I would say, that your nuke type, that guy that's going to go up over top of somebody or is going to out physical somebody as a ball's in the air. But Tillman is more physical. The two, but Judy is a route winner. And he was still okay, not as efficient as I'd like him to be in week one, but he's still going to be fine. Then it comes down to, like, are they going to live in 12 personnel again? They lived in it 50% of the snaps in week one. They love Harold Fannin. They put him in the backfield. They put him in the slot. Hell, they gave him a snap at quarterback. Like, they're doing everything. Looks the part. He's a duck-footed runner, man. He's kind of weird, but he gets it done, man. And he's just 21, barely. Like, if he's the dude he showed in week one, which when he came out, Cole, I was like, hey, the vision for me is Isaiah Likely 2.0. Like, he's that type of compliment to David, where he's very position diverse, a really nuanced route runner at the tight end position, but not limited to being an inline guy. He can get in the slot. He can play X for you in certain scenarios. So I love Isaiah Likely. I love what the Ravens have built offensively, and I think the Browns emulating that, which is a place, Kevin, when he came to Cleveland, two tight ends, Austin Hooper and David Njoku, we wanted to be. Across Kevin's first 3 years, they used more 13 personnel than anybody in the league. Then they went away from it as they didn't want to have two tight ends. They liked a lot more 11. Hell, they were like number 4 in 11 personnel last year, but they're really reversing the clock, getting more to what Kevin's comfortable with, trying to live that way. But again, Cole, it all comes down to if they can run it. If they can't run it, it's a dead in water situation. You just cannot ask Joe to throw 50 times. If you get to a comfortable position schematically, running the football with some efficiency, which may happen probably when they get Quinshon more settled in, they can live in a world where Joe's 25 to 30 dropbacks or attempts, and that's just a healthier world to be in and more challenging because you don't get those plays out of structure. To Joe's credit, I don't know how much you watched week one. He did punch out and make some throws on the move, and got those old man bones moving.
But that running back, he rolled out to his right and hit running back wheel. Well, it wasn't really quite a wheel.
It was Fannin on that, actually. So it was Fannin, and then he had another one he found Fannin on punching out. Yeah, he came out of the backfield. But
yeah, no, I was watching it out of the end zone view, so I couldn't really see the ball placement.
Well, Fannin also wears 44, so that's like true. He looks like a running back in all essence. He went from 88 in the preseason to 44, and people were crushed that he went to 40. He wore 44 in college before he went to 0. So, heaven forbid. But anyway, nah, man, like they're going to use Fannin a lot. I think they will continue to try to do that. I think they're going to try to continue to get him and David involved in the blocking game, try to get you into a bit more manipulative personnel on your side where you got to play maybe guys who aren't as good in coverage or in space. And we want to bully you into putting a third backer on the field and then try to take advantage of you. We'll see if that ultimately comes to fruition. I think the Ravens like to stay light in their personnel in the back half. But yeah, that's the goal. But if they can't figure out any efficiency in the run game, it's going to be a long season.
Yeah, and that was always the Joe playbook. It was outside of the 2012 playoff run where he was just the best passer I've ever seen in my life. I don't really know where that came from. He didn't do that consistently, but it was play action, set up the long pass game, and in a lot of ways, Jerry Jeudy's a really good type of receiver for him because of what he can do on crossers when you can unlock that with your play action run game, it becomes very dangerous. You're putting defenses in a pickle, working them over the top, especially teams that are going to play zone. Just absolutely.
Well, I will say, I don't want to cut you off, but something to monitor for your people is the Browns like to get under center and they like to run play. This is how I term it. There's play action and run action. Run action is all 11 guys are committed to selling the bit on run. It's a heavy commitment. It's usually minimal routes tied to it. We're selling the hell out of this, and we're going to try to get something big because we sell everybody. The second level is going to get committed. Some teams are good enough at the run game efficiency that they can, what I use is just traditional play action verbiage, which is a straight drop kind of at quarterback. You're extending, turning your head, turning your back, presenting the football, but your O-line is in a pass fan. They're not selling. They're not pulling anybody. Yeah. They're not going lateral. They're not attacking vertical. They're selling in a pass fan, a modified version. The Browns like to do that as the core of their play action. The Bengals' second and third levels didn't give a shit about it. They did not care anytime the Browns turned their back and flashed that fake because they know they're not running the ball very well on us, so we can react late to it. And that's a place where I'm interested if, how do the Browns navigate that? Because if you're not getting any commitment from the second or third levels on those turn your back scenarios, it's not healthy to take your quarterback's eyes off of downfield for something that's not working. So do they do a little bit more draw game this week where they pass set more and try to make you be honest with that? That's something to pay attention to. They ran a couple screens in week one, but Kevin is a big screen guy. If guys are chomping at the bit to turn the corner on Joel, chomping at the bit to turn the corner on Dewan, do they go to a little bit more screen game? Do they get the tight ends involved in that? Had a tight end screen to Njoku that would have been a big play, but Logan Wilson got his arm on it. I think they'll try to get that involved a little bit on the road and the crowd noise and all that stuff too. So just something to monitor the structure of the Browns offense. They want to do what you're talking about. Get under center. Yeah. Let's sell the hell out of run and let's try to push vertical. They got this young man named Isaiah Bond, who's a UDFA, but it was going to be a drafted guy. He had a whole circus of stuff, but he can run. They got guys they want to try, but Joe, ultimately, to your point, and this is all old quarterbacks, man. Tom Brady put it into like the history books his last year in Tampa. They don't want to get hit. He don't want to get hit. Yeah. He's going to get rid of that thing if he can, as quick as he can. And since he didn't cover the back out of the backfield very well, and they'll take advantage of it. He'll do that as long as you give it to him. Yeah. So I will, like you said a while back in the show, interested how they navigate handling back out of the backfield this week. Do they play a bit more cover 6 to the side of the back, put it down corner over there? Do they have a hard running curl flat defender? Because then there's obviously wrinkles that come on the offensive side of trying to chase, replace that guy. We'll see. That's the chess game that's going to be interesting this week.
Love it. Well, Jake, I speak for everyone that will watch this. We really appreciate your insight, all of the stuff you bring here. Absolutely phenomenal overview. I feel like anybody that watches this is going to be prepared for this game, and that's exactly why I'm trying to do this series. We really appreciate you taking the time, spend with us, give us your insight. Let everybody know again where they can find you.
Yeah, we're just at brownsfilmbreakdown.com, just a website that is through Substack, and I don't expect any Baltimore fans to really give too much attention to Browns folks, but if we have a free newsletter we put out every day, and if you want to follow on socials, I like following some other, I think very level-headed voices on social too, to just stay up with what the rest of the division is doing. I'm at Jake_Burns. I think you see it right there, and then we have a Browns Film BDN because you can only use so many characters on Twitter. So yeah, Browns Film BDN over there is where we kind of stay after. But I'm looking forward. I love playing these division games. Nothing but respect for what the Ravens have built, how they operate. There's just such a heavy tie, Ozzy, all those years and all that stuff. And I know there's the difference in guys like me who didn't grow up hating that because they didn't, you know what I mean? I just respect how they've always done stuff. So yeah, I love playing Baltimore. I love Lamar. The funny thing is the two quarterbacks I would love the most are Joe and Lamar, and they're both in this division. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword there, but it's good to get together, and hopefully we can do this a little more through the years, buddy.
Sounds good, man. Well, thank you so much. And as always, my friends out there, be good to yourselves, be good to each other. Peace out.